Welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. I assure you that under this mask, I am Eve Stevens. My pronouns are she, her, and I am one of the ministers of this congregation. Not long from now, you will meet my service collaborator, Paul Wilson. Paul is multitasking this morning, playing bells, singing, and speaking. Thank you, Paul. There is a parable from the Zen Buddhist tradition that may be familiar to you from Suzuki Roshi's work, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Here's how it goes. A teacher once went to go see a Zen master. And when they were seated across the table from each other, the teacher asked the Zen master to explain the meaning of Zen. But after asking the question, the teacher proceeded to talk and talk, wanting to share what he did already know. The Zen master sat patiently listening without interrupting for a while before setting 2 teacups on the table. As the teacher talked on, the Zen master began to fill the teacher's cup with tea. But rather than stopping when the cup was full, the Zen master poured on and on until the tea spilled over the lip of the cup and ran over onto the table and then onto the floor. The teacher, looking flabbergasted, said, "What are you doing? Can't you see that the cup is full?" According to Suzuki Roshi's telling, the Zen master replied, "I want to point out to you that you are similarly attempting to understand Zen while your mind is full. First, empty your mind of preconceptions before you attempt to understand Zen. If your mind is empty, it is always ready for anything. It is open to everything. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's, there are few." This hour, we turn with gratitude to the wise teachings of Zen Buddhism, taking on our own posture of curiosity, asking how might we live if we were to attempt this practice of approaching people and situations with an empty cup. Welcome. It's good to be together this morning. And if you are watching this service live on Sunday, September 26th, you can head over to our public Facebook page where you can greet one another in real time.
This morning, let us imagine the flame of our chalice as a light to guide us into a new season and a new year for our community, an illumination to help us indeed to begin again and see anew. That illumination shines on all of us as we reach out to one another and help each other to find the best ways to strengthen our community and our world. Good morning. I'm Paul Wilson. My pronouns are he, his, and along with Ann Doss Helms, I serve as co-chair of our Board of Trustees. If you are visiting this morning, welcome. I'm glad you've decided to explore what we have to offer. In addition to Sunday morning services, there are classes and social opportunities for children, youth, and adults. If you'd like to get better connected, please reach out to our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. Her email address is kelly@uuccharlotte.org. You can also reply to her comment under today's welcome post on our public Facebook page. Here at the UUCC, we have a full and promising year ahead of us. As co-chair of the board, my main concern and interest is in strengthening the already powerful connections that we share here at the UUCC, and in particular, in connecting the board with the congregation whose interests and well-being it is our mission to serve. In roughly 2 weeks, Ann and I will be setting up virtual Meet the Board sessions where any of you can connect with us or other board members and ask about, talk about, share about life within the UUCC. Please look in Currents for announcements about this series of meetings. I'm looking forward to the chance to speaking with you. Now, here is a reading from a Dharma talk by the Buddhist abbess Zenke Blanche Hartman, entitled Beginner's Mind. Beginner's mind is Zen Buddhist practice in action. It is the mind that is innocent of preconceptions and expectations, judgments and prejudices. Beginner's mind is just present to explore and observe and see things as they are. I think of beginner's mind as the mind that faces life like a small child, full of curiosity and wonder and amazement. I wonder what this is. I wonder what that is. I wonder what this means, without approaching things with a fixed point of view or a prior judgment, just asking, what is it? Earlier this week, I was having lunch with Indigo, our small child at City Center. He saw an object on the table and got very interested in it. He picked it up and started fooling with it, looking at it, putting it in his mouth, and banging on the table with it, just engaging with it without any previous idea of what it is. For Indigo, it was just an interesting thing, and it was a delight to him to see what he could do with this thing. You and I would see it and say, it's a spoon. It sits there, and you use it for soup. It doesn't have all the possibilities that he finds in it. Watching Indigo, you can see the innocence of, what is it? Can we look at our lives in such a way? Can we look at all of the aspects of our lives with this mind, just open to see what there is to see?
I drive my almost 4-year-old, Ethan, to school every day. There's a flurry of activity from the time he wakes up, pulling on socks while trying to figure out what to have for breakfast, setting the timer to play for what I am always told is a woefully inadequate amount of time. Then we stumble toward the car. I strap him in, hand him his toothbrush so he can multitask on the drive. Before I hop into the front seat, notice for the 80th time the pile of trash in front of the passenger seat, shake my head, Eve, 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 and start driving. A few minutes into the drive, Ethan usually wakes up enough to be conversational. And somehow, wherever my mind is, as we're making our way, he's able to casually, out of nowhere, pull me with him into a state of wonder. A few months ago, he asked me, "Mommy, what are those ropes in the sky?" Maybe you can picture right away what he was talking about. I had no idea. I looked around everywhere, taking him at his word, looking for actual ropes in the sky. The lines that planes leave behind? No. Oh, the power lines. Once we confirmed that we were indeed talking about the same thing, he, of course, asked, "So what do power lines do?" And if you are an electrician, I could have used your help that day. But I said, well, they do a lot, I guess, but one thing is that they carry light to the grocery store and your school and our house, so when you turn on the light, it works. To Ethan, that was a very cool and very satisfactory answer. Like magic, he said. Pretty much, yeah. Just like Indigo, the child with the spoon, Ethan greets the world every day with curiosity. When we first moved to our current home, one of our neighbors always seemed to be out in his yard building or fixing something. As I'd head down the street, he'd be in view for about 15 seconds. So I had these daily 15-second snapshots of this guy. He's a tall white man with a bushy beard and some tattoos. And I'd find myself looking around for his motorcycle, just sure that this guy was going to have a motorcycle. The first few times we ran into him while taking a walk, we'd exchange a few pleasantries. And I noticed that there was a tattoo on the inside of one of his forearms, but it was always mostly covered, and I could never get a good look at it without being rude or making it too obvious that I was trying to look at his tattoo. all I could get out of the corner of my eye was a flash of something red. I decided he must have grown up rural, somewhere near here. We would not agree politically, so best to avoid all that. And I grumbled to myself about how he obviously felt comfortable sporting a tattoo that I was fairly certain was a Confederate flag. One evening, my neighbor and his wife and their 3-year-old were sitting around a fire pit in their front yard, and they asked us to join them as we came back from our walk. Delighted to have a playmate for our kids so that maybe we could have some adult conversation, who cares about what, we said yes. As it turns out, my neighbor with his long, bushy beard and his wife and little one had recently moved from Chicago. He stays home with their daughter while his wife works during the day. And once when he rolled up his sleeves to make adjustments to the fire, I finally got a good look at that tattoo on the inside of his forearm. It was his daughter's name, surrounded by red flowers. When I complimented him about the tattoo, he smiled and explained, "Oh yeah, those flowers were in bloom when she was born." When Suzuki Roshi explains beginner's mind, he speaks of the mind not already made up. On the walk back to our house, I tried to declutter my mind of whatever other preconceptions and assumptions about this man that I had collected and stored there, trying belatedly to make some room for all I didn't know. Sometimes, when I am running late, I swear that school buses hide somewhere waiting until they see me coming, which is when they turn on their flashing lights and the stop sign swings out and the cars in both directions have to stop and wait. Often when this happens, I sit there cursing the fates, feeling an eternity tick by before finally I'm able to move forward and go about my day. But the other morning, I was not running late yet. I was returning from an early morning swim. The rhythm of my arms and legs, the alternating bursts of cool air with the warmth of the pool with each stroke, the feeling of being held by the water had emptied my mind. And there it was, a school bus, lights flashing, stop sign extended. No matter what the driver of each car was rushing toward, everyone stopped in both directions, and we waited. We watched as this precious pint-sized being walked around the bus, oversized backpack bouncing to and fro, and climbed inside. I was struck still by the beauty of this ritual, as if I'd never seen it before. When a child walks into the road, even for a moment, everything stops. They become collectively our child. And together we hold the edges of this safe space for them, sending them off into a day we won't get to hear about later, but knowing that we played our part. In the early morning light, endorphins making their way throughout my bloodstream, an experience that had become fixed, predictable, tiresome, was new again. Abbess Zaki Blanche Hartman writes, "Beginner's mind is the mind that's just investigating, open to whatever occurs, curious, seeking but not with expectation or grasping, just being there and observing and seeing what occurs, being ready for whatever experience arises in this moment. Each one of us," she says, "has the nature of awakening. Each one of us is a Buddha. How do we meet our nature?" she asks. "How do we become intimate with it and bring it into the world?" "This is what it's about," she says. "This is why we practice." This practice reminds us that we do not need to wait for a change in season or for some pivotal transition in our lives to begin again. If we are rushing ahead with our day and forgetting to be amazed by the world around us, or we see someone and decide within seconds that we know their story, know what they think, how they act, who they are, or when we forget that something mundane or routine is sacred. It is in our power with practice to pause, breathe, and begin again. Sometimes we get held back by what we already know and have already decided. If we are willing to practice emptying ourselves of preconceptions and assumptions, if we are willing to practice letting go of a fixed or rigid understanding of the way things are, then we can, with an open mind and curious heart, begin again. As a staff, we recently took a class called Transforming Hearts, a series of pre-recorded video sessions led by two Unitarian Universalist ministers who are trans men. I arrived to the first of our staff discussions feeling nervous. I thought, what if in the course of this conversation, I reveal how hard it still is for me to think outside of the male-female binary? A binary we've been conditioned to conform to, that we've been measured by all of our lives. What if it's obvious how uncertain I am of the difference between the meaning of orientation and identity? What if when I contribute a thought, I get it wrong? As part of this class, we were encouraged to do our own additional exploring and reading outside of the class materials and our conversations. In the midst of such exploring, I found a spoken word poem by a South Africa-based trans youth named Lee Makobe. This young person stood on a lonely, spacious stage, grounded, voice clear and strong. As part of a longer piece, I heard Makobe describing childhood. Having been assigned female at birth, Makobe says, "My mother told me of the miracle I was, said I could grow up to be anything I want. I decided to be a boy. It was cute. I had a snapback, toothless grin, used skin knees as street cred. I was the mystery of an anatomy, a question asked but not answered, tight-roping between awkward boy and apologetic girl. And when I turned 12, Makobe says, the boy phase wasn't deemed cute anymore. It was met with nostalgic aunts who missed seeing my knees in the shadow of skirts, who reminded me that my kind of attitude would never bring a husband home. I swallowed insults along with slurs. Makobe says, naturally, I did not come out of the closet. The kids at my school opened it without my permission, called me by a name I did not recognize. I listened twice to Lee Makobe's spoken word poem, and I felt more than I thought as I listened. Makobe's words helped me remember that I could not, should not, was not being asked to show up to this class as an expert, as someone with certain and wise counsel to share on the topic of gender diversity, trying to prove that all that I already know. Instead, I was being given an opportunity to empty my cup, to listen, to open my mind and my heart, to arrive curious with a willingness to let go of a fixed and rigid understanding of gender, a confining understanding that limits our ability to honestly express ourselves or to receive one another's full humanity. This is part of the seeking and stretching and learning that we're doing together this year as we move a little further along toward our congregational vision of spiritual, societal, and environmental transformation. We do not need to arrive at any service or class or conversation that happens here this year as experts. We just need to practice together, seeing what we never noticed before, relinquishing our assumptions about others, and loosening our grip on ways of thinking that have become fixed and rigid within us. We'll practice beginner's mind so that we can pause, breathe, and begin again together.
Hello again. When Eve invited me to offer a reflection for this service, I was at first intimidated by the sharp contrast between beginner's mind as an ideal or an experience and the reality of my own actual mind. My mind is a junkyard, full of fragments of all kinds of things, bits and pieces gathered together over a good many years of undisciplined curiosity and random experience, and heaped on top of one another in no particular order that I can discover. I suspect that many of us share this as a common experience, and part of the huge attraction of beginner's mind for me comes from the imagined relief of being able to set aside that pile of junk, to let it go, and to see the world freshly, like indigo with the spoon. I have had some few moments like that, completely unexpected but powerfully welcome arrivals of something like grace in the midst of the ordinary world. But there are obstacles to prevent those arrivals of grace, and the junkyard itself is not the only obstacle, nor even the most important one. Regularly, continually, I am consumed with rage at the spectacle of our world and the ghastly mess that we humans have made of it in the past and up to the present day. Along with that rage comes an actual hatred directed at those people whom I see as most responsible for the mess in one or another of its many dimensions. At the same time, I very deeply believe that such emotions harm me, harm the people I love, and prevent me from living as good a life as I might otherwise be able to live. To sharpen that point just a bit, our Unitarian Universalist first principle, taken seriously, requires me to overcome or transform those feelings, to attribute inherent worth and dignity to people I truly hate. So far, I have found no reliable way to do that. In fact, I may never be able to take any appreciable steps toward that goal. But finding a way to implement and explore beginner's mind in some form seems like a very promising path to follow. My hope is to learn how to oppose evil unalterably, but without hating it, paradoxical as that may seem, first to acknowledge and then to set aside the rage and hatred so that ultimately nobody is harmed, including myself. If I only manage to keep from acting on or expressing my rage, that will be a victory of sorts. And if I can create some new space in my junkyard to let in more moments of beginner's mind, that will be valuable too. May we all create such moments for ourselves, singly and together. Everybody please have a good day and a good week.
Thank you, Paul. Let's breathe more deeply together now in a time of meditation. I invite you to close your eyes. Feel the earth holding you just as you are. Deepen your breath. In your mind's eye, picture a dry erase board. A big white board hanging on the wall in front of you. Big enough that it takes up your entire field of vision. There are words covering the board, in a variety of colors, pictures too. You can't make them all out, but here and there you recognize words and names and images from the chaos. What words, what names, what images do you see? You can tell that it's a large whiteboard, but it's so covered with scribbling that it's almost become hard to see the smooth white surface underneath. Now, in these moments of silence, take a wide, durable eraser in your hand. Start at the top, in the top left corner. Slowly and deliberately, paying attention to the movement of your hand, begin to erase the cluttered scribbling. Every time your hand moves, notice the smooth white surface left behind. If after you wipe a space clean, the scribbling returns, take a breath and wipe it away again. In the silence, slowly, calmly breathing in and out, erase what you can, even if it's one small corner, again and again. Zen abbess Hartman says, sometimes we can transform our attention from this dimension of having and accumulating and acquiring to the dimension of being. Zen abbot Katagiri Roshi says, we sit with our breath to settle the self and to let the flower of the life force bloom. Thank you for the gifts you share with this community. Your generosity sustains us and brings renewed energy and possibility. Thank you. As this time together this morning draws to a close, we pause for a moment to again breathe in peace and breathe out love in community. We hold in our prayers the Haitian people continuing to seek refuge in the aftermath of so much collective trauma in their homeland. In particular, we send love to those subjected to violence and fear at our southern border this week. And we lift up the names of those we know about among us who are in need of our love and prayers. There are a number of people grieving in our congregation this week, mourning the recent losses of their loved ones. We're holding in our prayers Thelma Reynolds and her family as they mourn the death of Thelma's brother. We send our love to Margie Storch and Tom Moore and Margie's family as they mourn the death of her mother. We hold in our hearts Kate Stroud and her family as they mourn the death of Kate's mother. We hold in our prayers Carrie Ann Wolf and her family as they are mourning the death of Carrie Ann's father. Whatever feels heavy for you today, if it has been a lonely or difficult week, may you feel held by the love of this community. If you find yourself celebrating this week, embracing some much welcome news perhaps, or having connected with a dear friend, we share in your joy. In the rush of this week ahead, may we remember that it is possible to pause, breathe, and begin again. Be well all, and reach out when you need us.